This was the breaking news yesterday. Probably, I kind of want to say one of the biggest, if not the biggest story in the NFL yesterday. The Lions trade their second-tier running back, their backup running back, David Montgomery, their knuckles to Gibbs' Sonic, to the Houston Texans. The full trade is the Lions get center Juice Scruggs, who is 26 years old, I'm sorry, a 26. I think he actually is 26 years old, but Detroit also gets a 2026 fourth rounder and a 2027 seventh round pick. So they get a couple of picks, and Houston gets a new running back. I guess, like, if we're just looking at this objectively, like, forget about fan narrative, forget about, all that, like, winners and losers. It kind of feels like a pretty decent trade for both teams. Like, for Houston, they add to their running back room. Who was even their running back last year? Because I'm pretty sure Mixon was hurt for much of last year. David Montgomery has shown himself to be a very, talented, run through the tackles, get you a couple of yards when you need them, running back. And either way, he's also a veteran in the league. So a pretty solid enough move for the Texans. I do think ultimately the Lions got the value out of this. That, you bring in a young offensive lineman, a guy who's started in a few games in spurts, but he's generally a depth player on the O-line, and a couple of draft picks for a running back who was your backup running back. So, I'd say it's basically a pretty solid enough trade. Now, there's a few things to actually take away from it narrative-wise. My immediate reaction is that Detroit seems like they're moving to a one running back system. Now, the sentiment among many fans and among many of the talking heads is that they're basically probably going to use that fourth round pick for his replacement. Potentially. It's entirely possible. Brad Holmes certainly not shying away from using draft pick for a running back. No doubt about that. Thank you, Bacon Bombs. Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, and Woody Marks was the running back room in Houston. And I'd say David Montgomery probably squares in at the second spot there, because the rest of Nick Chubb is just a corpse of himself. And the other guy, Woody Marks. Does anybody know who Woody Marks is? If Woody Marks walked into this room, would you know who he is? Anyway, where was I? Scruggs, he's a depth guy. He's not. He started in one game last year, and Houston's offensive line was terrible. I guess I'm happy. Yeah, you needed maybe another body in that offensive line room. If Campbell sees something in this guy that maybe Houston was underutilizing him or failing at developing him, okay, fair enough. One of the needs of this offseason was offensive line, and they already went out and got at least a depth piece for their running back too. So I can live with that. On the contrary to some fan belief, though, this to me says that the Lions are actually pretty serious about, making some big changes here. Like, David Montgomery was a fan favorite. He was like a part of this core. I mean, him getting brought in was when the winning really started in Detroit in 23, and then they extended him last year. Like, he was a major part of this operation here. And the fact that Detroit said, you know what, it's not working out. The fit, maybe the writing is on the wall. He obviously did miss some time in 2024 down the stretch there, and that very well could have, and his performance in the playoffs, that very well might have been, a sign of things to come. Maybe his best days are behind him, and Detroit said, you know what, let's cash in while we still can, and not, get attached to our own guys. So to me, that it seems like a win to go ahead and trade him for some picks, which is where Brad Holmes, I think, even the most critical of fans will agree, Brad Holmes shines in the draft, even notwithstanding the last maybe couple of drafts where you didn't have, all pro future Hall of Famers necessarily. And even then, I think last draft was a pretty fine enough draft from like a Trench's perspective. Tate Ratledge and Tyreek Williams, I think, were both pretty decent guys. Anyhow, that's a totally different discussion. On the other hand, I really like David Montgomery, and I was vocal that I thought I would like to keep him if that's possible. It seems as though they did not agree, and they know more than me, at least about the the status of him as a player. What is his health? What is it that he's asking for? Like if he was asking for a pay raise, I think you can go back and look at past shows. I didn't want them to trade David Montgomery. When that sort of talk started among fans, I was not too keen on it because my philosophy is this. You don't get better by getting rid of good players in general. There may be some cases where you can make yourself better in what appears to be a counterintuitive way. But in general, you don't get better by getting rid of bad players. You get better by bringing in good players and keeping good players on your team. And Dave Montgomery is a good player. But again, the Lions brass, after a hugely disappointing season, a failure of a season last year, they do not see any sacred cows. They do not care about rocking the boat potentially. I mean, once again, this is a guy that Jahmyr Gibbs looked up to. This is a guy that fans loved. And they said, yeah, we're going to move on from him. We're going to trade him and get some picks, and save some money on that point. So to me, this is a signal in the if we were afraid that Holmes or that Campbell were trying to get too complicit or just only keep their own guys and not settle for going out and taking a risk. I think this move tells me that no, I think they are willing to take a potentially risky move. I mean, let's put it this way. This move could very well blow up in their face. Like their running back core could turn into what used to be, a top group in the league with Montgomery and Gibbs too. It could turn into just a complete mess of itself or a shell of itself. And Montgomery could go out in Houston. If they can fix their O-line, he can go out and have a really good season. Now, I'm not saying that that's more likely. I think it's more likely that the Lions will come out looking much more like winners in this move than the Houston Texans. But at the same time, again, it's at least it's a move where you can say, okay, there is a tangible risk being taken by the Detroit Lions by trading away a fan favorite, a locker room guy, a leader, all of that. So with all of that said, obviously, and on that point, there's another offseason move that had been made, and the Lions cut Graham Glasgow. So that's going to save them some money as well. And once again, the Lions are seeing that the offensive line is a problem. They trade their running back to bring in a depth offensive lineman. They're cutting Graham Glasgow, who had a really not great year. So maybe they're telling us that prepare for free agency because we're going to try to bring in some offensive line talent to, fix what was very obviously the biggest flaw on the team. So I am optimistic after this trade. Obviously, free agency is going to start, I don't believe next week, or I don't believe this week. I believe next week is when it starts officially, when the league year officially begins. I could be wrong about that. You can let me know in the chat. But either way, I guess I find the move interesting, and it could pay out, or the Lions could go back to what they have been historically. Hopefully it's not that. And I suspect it's not that, but only time will tell. Hey, YouTube, if you like clips like that, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We've got live shows every Tuesday night. Hope to see you there.